Let me tell you, one of the things that the chairman and I actually agree upon, we don't agree on a lot, is that we both know that there has been a sharp incline as it relates to threats upon our lives. Regardless of what side of the aisle you sit on, we both know and agree that as sitting members of Congress, we both are enduring more death threats than anybody should in this country. And I believe that it is because of the divisive rhetoric and it is because of the selective enforcement of things. And so when we have, and I'm gonna be clear because I had remarks and I'm going a whole other way.
It is still shocking how quickly and in how many ways Donald Trump has turned his back on our allies, whether it's calls to make Canada a 51st state tariffs on our trading partners, or of course, the image that is still stuck in our minds of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance berating President Zelenskyy in the Oval Office. And clearly, President Zelenskyy has not forgotten about that day. And of course he wouldn't, because Donald Trump since then has done everything he possibly can to support Vladimir Putin both publicly and privately. And it is the reason why President Zelenskyy, when asked about his relationship with the U.S., gave an answer that was shocking, but in many ways also wasn't that triggered Donald Trump into an absolute meltdown. We are going to get into it. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me now. Before we can get into what President Zelenskyy recently said in a 60 Minutes interview, I want to hear Donald Trump's response to a devastating and disgraceful bombing campaign launched by the Russians just hours ago.
Yes. Do you have a reaction to Russia's Palm Sunday attack on Ukraine?
I think it was terrible, and I was told they made a mistake, but I think it's a horrible thing. I think the whole war is a horrible thing. I think the war is, for that war to have started, is an abuse of power. This country would have never allowed that war to have started if I were president. That war is a shame. Millions of people are dead that should be alive. Cities are being destroyed all over Ukraine. The whole culture is gone. It's, or certainly very severely hurt. You know, the chapels, the churches, the spirals, all of the things that they had in Ukraine were among the most beautiful anywhere in the world. Most of them been knocked down and blown up into a million pieces. But most importantly, you have millions of people dead that shouldn't be dead.
A mistake Donald Trump calls a targeted campaign by Vladimir Putin, breaking with an agreement that we knew he would never actually abide by. A mistake. How much more water can this guy carry for Vladimir Putin? How many more excuses can Donald Trump offer up? Age. How much more can Donald Trump turn his back on our ally? Because some dictator batted his eyelashes at him. It is just a sad example of what a pathetic, insecure man that Donald Trump is, that Vladimir Putin has such a hold over him. But at this point, we should not be surprised, because President Zelenskyy isn't, and he made that really clear in his 60 Minutes interview when he said, "This does. The United States have your back." Scott Pye asked President Zelenskyy, pausing, said, "Even in this pause of mine, there's a problem, because I want to answer truthfully and quickly that the United States is our strategic strong partner, but the pause is doubt. I don't doubt that the people of America are with us, but in a long war, many details are forgotten in Europe. Everyone fears that the United States may drift away from Europe." Scott Pye continued asking, "Can you do without the United States?" With Zelenskyy answering, "I think without the United States, we will suffer great losses, human and territorial, so I wouldn't like to consider that. But this is our destiny, our land, our life. One way or another, we will end this war." So much like all of us at home, President Zelenskyy and the rest of Europe have no confidence in Donald Trump, because why should we? This is a man who is completely self-involved and does not care about the outcome of this war for our ally. He cares about the outcome of this war for the dictator that he loves, and it's the reason he freaked out and attacked not only President Zelenskyy, but President Biden for some reason. After this interview, the war between Russia and Ukraine is Biden's war, not mine. I just got here. And for 4 years during my term had no problem in preventing it from happening. President Putin and everyone else respected your president. I had nothing to do with this war, but I'm working diligently to get the death and destruction to stop if the 2020 presidential election was not rigged and it was in so many ways that horrible war would have never happened. President Zelenskyy and crooked Joe Biden did an absolutely horrible job in allowing this travesty to begin. There were so many ways of preventing it from ever starting. That is the past. Now we have to get it to stop and fast. So sad Donald Trump continues to refuse to call Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine an invasion of Ukraine by Vladimir Putin. Somehow, this is President Zelenskyy's fault. He allowed this to happen, eh? And this just reminds me of the perfect clip for a call out of this nonsensical talking point that was for Jay from Jasmine Crockett, who slammed MAGA for their defense of Putin, their capitulation at Trump, and a takedown right here.
I first just want to begin with a news alert. Guess what? Joe Biden is not the president anymore. So maybe we can move on. Maybe we can move into the present, because it seems like we are living in the past. And listen, these are not the good old days, you know, like you used to sit around and your grandparents would talk to you about what used to happen. What we need to be talking about is how we are going to legislate, because I think that some of my colleagues have confused what our jobs are. And I get that we're sitting in judiciary. And so it may seem as if we are here to be litigators, but we are here to be legislators, which means that we are supposed to be writing laws, not trying to have our own trials and determine whether or not something is true or not, or whatever the case is, or who should be sued, who shouldn't be sued. All I know is that a great American hero, a good senator out of New Jersey, said something to the effect yesterday as he was shattering the record for holding the floor, a record that had been held by another racist in this country. As he shattered that, he said something about the fact that this should not be about left versus right. It should be about right versus wrong. And I am going to tell you that I want us to focus on right versus wrong. The reason that we are struggling right now in this country as it relates to people not trusting agencies, honestly, a lot of it is because of elected leaders. Let me tell you, one of the things that the chairman and I actually agree upon, we don't agree on a lot, is that we both know that there has been a sharp incline as it relates to threats upon our lives. Regardless of what side of the aisle you sit on, we both know and agree that as sitting members of Congress, we both are enduring more death threats than anybody should in this country. And I believe that it is because of the divisive rhetoric, and it is because of the selective enforcement of things. And so when we have, and I'm gonna be clear, because I had remarks and I'm going a whole other way. To have the sitting attorney general go on, and I'm gonna call it faux news. I know some of y'all love it, but it's fake to me. To have her go on Fox News and to then decide that she wanted to send a threat to me, it was wrong. Because here it is, she is the highest law enforcement agent in this country, and people are watching and they are consuming this information, and they are believing that simply because I decided that I wanted to exercise my right to free speech, which I am not abridged from doing, that she then wanted to then politicize something that should not be politicized. I don't like Elon Musk. I'ma say it 50,000 times. I don't like him. I don't like that he going out there and he firing people. I think that he's a crook because somehow the rest of us can't sit around and get whatever federal contracts we want. The rest of us can't sit around and get law enforcement and get them somehow ordained as federal law enforcement to protect him. The rest of us can't get our dealerships protected by the federal government. That is somebody that is operating above the law. For whatever reason, just because he has a lot of money, more money than everybody else. And yes, I am happy to see that on my birthday, which is what I said, there were peaceful protests around this world against him because he is a problem. And so you never should have somebody that is sitting that high and is going to sit up here and threaten a sitting member of Congress when she knew good and well, if she watched the entire thing, that I specifically told protesters to make sure you consult with lawyers, just like I've told protesters over and over and over in the history of me advising people to go out and exercise their constitutional right. The fact that there are other sitting members that have received letters of threat from this new DOJ tells me that they are about retribution and they are not about following the law. The reason that our party, or I won't even say our party, our country is torn apart is because we can't even agree on right versus wrong. This should not be left versus right. The only thing that we're asking is that we have law enforcement that will show up when there is an actual crime. If somebody calls and says, hey, I need you to investigate this cyber crime, or I need you to investigate this child pornography, or I need you to investigate this robbery, then we want somebody to show up, and we don't want them to look at us and act as if just because I'm black or because I'm woman that I am not worthy of having that case investigated, because we have an administration that is continuously railing against diversity, equity, and inclusion, or we don't need people that show up that feel like diversity should not be valued. That is why we should have somebody that may show up and looks like me. The final thing that I'll say, because you've been gracious, is this. When I first became a public defender, I had no criminal defense experience. And I walked in and I told my boss, Charlie, I said, listen, you should hire me. He said, why? I said, because I'm black. Charlie looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, let me tell you something. When I walk in, I'm going to walk in with a level of rapport and understanding that maybe some of my other colleagues will not. Charlie offered me my job, and I worked my butt off, and I worked really, really hard for all of my clients, not just those that look like me, and that is what it looks like to serve.
We have a bunch of cowards in the Republican Congress and Congress, and we also have one in the White House very clearly. And I'm so glad that Jasmine Crockett used that opportunity not just to call him out, but to have that silence really loudly sit there as MAGA was so terrified, had no bravery, like the men and women fighting in Ukraine, no bravery. Like President Zelenskyy just sat in silence, pretty obvious that they are on the wrong side of history here. So we're going to keep calling them out on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.